Some of these things you may already know, but you may not know. So we like to just kind of answer some of these things. I often get the question, why UK? When I'm looking at pharmacy school, what is it about you that's different from whatever other school? And I can't really speak to any other school, but I can tell you what our strengths are. So we are currently ranked number 6 in the nation. We've been in the top 10 for 40 years. So what that means to students is name recognition. So when our students are seeking employment, anyone in the nation is familiar with UK College of Pharmacy, and they respect that name. So it typically results in employment, and we have a very strong employment rate. We have an 85% day of graduation employment rate. So that means when our students are walking across the stage, 85% of them are employed at that point. Typically, those remaining 15% are limiting themselves geographically, meaning they only want to work in Lexington or they only want to work in Louisville, where there happen to be 2 pharmacy schools, so it's a more saturated market. Those students typically find employment within 6 months, but it may be a little bit more competitive for them. Our graduation is quite strong. We have a 95% retention, and we have a very strong residency program. So who knows what I'm saying when I say residency? And it's okay if you don't know. Get a hand, get a shake. That's normally what I get. So that's absolutely fine. So when you go to med school, a residency is required after you complete med school. So for pharmacy, that's not a requirement, but it's definitely becoming more and more of a common thing, and it's becoming something that we are encouraging students to consider. So what that means is that after you complete your PharmD, you're a doctor, you can, instead of going right into the workforce, you can choose to instead apply for a residency program and work as a resident for a year up to 2 years, depending on your interests. And during that time, you're going to get specialized training. You're going to be paid, but you're not going to be paid the full amount of a full pharmacist. But you will have patient load, you will be going on rounds with doctors, you will be working in various areas of whatever specialization you're interested in. This is particularly important if you're interested in going to an area of pharmacy where you want to get some more hands-on experience. Examples of that would be pediatrics, oncology, emergency room, but even things like academia or community pharmacy have residency options in them. So what we tell students is that residencies are much more competitive to get into than pharmacy school. So what I encourage students to do is to ask all the pharmacy schools that you're applying for, what is your residency match rate? Because you want to know that you're in a program that's going to prepare you for success. Even if you choose not to go that direction, you want to be prepared for it. We do really well at this. We have a 94% match rate, and that's compared to the national average being 66%. So if that's something you're interested in, we're going to work really hard to prepare you for it. We're also going to prepare our students to work at the top of their license. So that means we are not just sort of churning out pharmacists to go and just work in a general setting, although many of our pharmacists do choose to go into the community setting, and that's absolutely great. That's the choice you want to do. But we're going to provide, we are also training our pharmacists to be leaders. And you'll find if you start doing your research and looking at, like for example, presidents or deans of pharmacy schools around the country, a lot of them are UK grads. A lot of UK grads are holding leadership positions in pharmaceutical companies. So if you start kind of doing your research, you'll find UK kind of everywhere. We do offer 4 dual degrees. Are you guys familiar with that?
How about someone have like business degree as well as a pharmacy degree?
That is one of them, absolutely.
I don't know.
No, that's okay. So those are listed in here in the brochure. So when you open this up, you'll see them described. There are 4. The first one is the one you just said, the MBA. The second is public health, and then we have a pharmaceutical sciences. So this is actually within the College of Pharmacy. So if you are interested in drug development and research, but you also want that patient care component, this is going to give you an opportunity to do both, because we do have a PhD program in PharmSci. So this allows you to get your PharmD and your Master's of Pharmacy PharmSci at the same time, and then if you wanted to, you could even go on and get your PhD if you chose to. And then the NPA is the Public Administration, so that's for drug policy. The 4 dual degrees, what's important to note about them is they're all designed to be integrated with the PharmD curriculum. So it's not adding additional semesters to your total time in school. They're also designed to start your second year of pharmacy school. So the idea is you apply for pharmacy school, get that first year under your belt, and then if you decide you want to also pursue that dual degree, you can. The biggest takeaway is that the tuition for that second program is waived. And that's a pretty big deal. That's not true everywhere else. So you're going to find there are a lot of colleges of pharmacy that offer dual degrees, but not very many of them have a tuition waived for them. So that's another area that I would encourage you to research. Any questions about that? Okay, keep going. So we have 6 healthcare colleges at UK, a School of Medicine, a School of Nursing, a School of Public Health, a School of Dentistry, and a School of Health Sciences. So what that means for our students is that we have a lot of interprofessional programming. So our pharmacy students actually work hands-on with our med students and with our nursing students. We bring in actors that play standardized patients, and they are trained on everything that they need to know about being a patient, both their condition and the medications they're on. And so our pharmacy students get to work in a mock healthcare team situation with the med student and the nursing students, so that they can all treat and assess the patient as they would in the real world before they're dealing with actually sick people. So that we think that's a bonus because we happen to have the luxury of having that med school and nursing school right next door to us. Literally, you can see the med school through our window, right out our door. We have a very strong, I already mentioned the employment rate, international opportunities. So if you're interested in studying abroad and maybe you didn't get an opportunity to as an undergrad, or you did but you want more of that, know that that's going to continue to be an opportunity for you. We have programs established in the summer. Right now we have a group of students that are going to Germany that's open to both pre-pharm and current pharmacy students. And then every other summer, our group of students are taken to Japan. And then we have a winter session where they go to London. And then in the 4th year of pharmacy school, if you really want to do an intensive study abroad experience, you can actually make one of your rotations an international rotation. So we have rotations set up in China, Scotland, Poland, Canada, Ecuador, I think. There are 7 or 8 countries that we work with. And those are listed in here too. Tell me more about that. Your 4th year of pharmacy school is entirely rotation. So year 1 through 3, you're doing a mixture of mock labs and hands-on patient care experiences. You do have some rotations during that time, but they're going to be local. And then your 4th year, it's entirely rotations. You're not really on campus at all, unless you happen to have a rotation on campus. But you can, because you can do an academic rotation. And you do 7 6-week rotations. You can opt to do 8 if you want, but usually people take their 8th as a break because they want it. They need a break at that point. And those 7 rotations can be done in a variety of areas. So for example, at that point you probably will have narrowed down your interests a bit, but you may want to get a little bit more specialized training to kind of really focus on what you want to do. So you could do a community rotation, you could do a rotation in the ER, you could do a rotation in critical care, you could do a rotation in infectious diseases. Just kind of depends on what you want to do. Any questions so far? Okay. So in terms of admission, the key thing that I want students to understand about our admissions is that we use this term holistic review, which is a really common term, and you probably have heard that before, or you'll hear it again if you haven't heard it yet. But what that means for us is that when we review an application, that application is reviewed as an individual piece. We're not comparing that application to any other application in the pool. We're not basing any decisions on a number. We're not basing any decision on one piece of information. We really are looking at everything that's in that application and how it all comes together and how it balances. So we're looking for well-rounded students. We're looking for students that have strengths in a variety of areas. I always discourage students from comparing PCAT scores because they can say, oh, so-and-so got in and they only had this on a PCAT. Well, but do you know what else was going on with their application? Because not every 2 people can have the same PCAT score and have very different applications. Doesn't necessarily mean they're both going to be competitive. So it all is a balance. So the things that we're going to consider, we're going to look at your pre-pharmacy coursework. And so The GPA is a big factor, that's a big component. The GPA is actually the strongest indicator for success in our program. But beyond just that number of the GPA, we're gonna look at the coursework that's behind it. Is this a student that only took the bare minimum of prereqs? Or is this a student that challenged themselves and took some more advanced science courses that went beyond just our bare requirements? And so maybe their GPA is slightly lower, but maybe their rigor is higher. And so that is gonna be a stronger applicant in the end. So take the opportunity to take some of those recommended electives and to branch out a little bit and not just do the bare minimum. Your PCAT scores are important, but they are definitely not the end-all be-all. We have a wide range of scores that are admitted when we look at PCAT. I tell students, because they always ask me, what do I need to get? Our average PCAT score is a 70, but that is really high compared to what our range is. Our average is a 70, but we see literally everything. I have seen a 1, I've seen a 99. And when I'm talking about numbers, I'm talking about the percentile. So is a 1 gonna get admitted? No, but a 50 might. So depending on these other things in the application. So you really do have to kind of balance it all out. What's gonna be important is that if we see an area of struggle in your transcript, we see this student has really shown a pattern of struggling in chemistry, we're going to go back and look at the PCAT score and see, did you master that content? And if they can demonstrate success in the PCAT in chemistry, we're going to be less concerned maybe about that pattern. But the opposite can also be true. If we see a low PCAT score, but we see success in a rigorous academic program, we're going to be less concerned about that score, because it might just be a person that is a poor standardized test taker. Does that make sense? Okay. Other things that are really important that I don't want to be dismissed are your experiences. There's an entire section in PharmCast devoted to listing your experiences, and I think one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen recently is that students don't fill that out in its entirety. They put only what they think we want to see, meaning they only put their pharmacy experience or they only put their healthcare experience. And what we really want to see is a wide view of everything you've done in the past 3 or 4 years, or however long you've been in undergrad. So thinking about what have you done to demonstrate teamwork? What have you done to show communication? What have you done to demonstrate service? What have you done to demonstrate leadership? These are qualities we look for in our pharmacists. So any way you can demonstrate that is going to be an added bonus to your application, even if it's not directly related to healthcare. So an example I like to give is we have an organization on campus for service dogs, where our students can adopt and foster dogs and train them to be service dogs. And you'll see them walking all around campus. The organization is called PAWS, and we have a student who was the president of that organization. And he talked a lot about that in his application. And it was actually really a strong move on his part, because all of the skills are skills we're looking for. We're looking for service, we're looking for leadership, we're looking for compassion. And so even though it wasn't healthcare, it's still related and connected. So think about that when you're choosing your experiences and when you're putting them on your application. The other thing I tell students is to avoid a checklist. Avoid, okay, I'm going to do this, so that I can show them I've done all these things because this is what they want to see. And so instead, I would prefer you, come on in and join us. Instead, what we would prefer to see is we would prefer to see active engagement in areas of, that you're passionate about. So choosing activities that have some meaning to you and pursuing them actively and becoming engaged in them. That's what we would rather see, rather than just a list of, here's all the places I volunteered in my life. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions about any of the experience stuff? Okay. Shadowing is important, volunteering is important, farm tech experience is important. So it doesn't mean that we don't want to see that stuff. We certainly do. It's just we like to see a full picture of your experiences. If you have questions about how to get shadowing or how to get volunteering, I would definitely talk to your advisors because they may be able to help you. You can also reach out to me and I can give you some tips. Hospital is a great place to go if you're trying to get some different pharmacy shadowing experience, meaning maybe you've had some experience in a community setting, but you'd like to see the other side of it because it is very different. And you may like one more than the other. You may prefer one. Just because you don't like community doesn't mean you might not like pharmacy. It just means that you might be more of a hospital pharmacy type. and vice versa. I've had people that really love community and don't like hospital at all. So the best way to know that is to start getting some experiences and finding out what suits you. Anything else that you can do to kind of set yourself apart is great. If you study abroad, we love that. If you're involved in an organization on campus, if you are in the honors program, undergraduate research, if you ever have opportunity to do research, we love research. So research we see as an equivalent to volunteering and shadowing. Another question I get asked a lot is, do I have to have all these things? And the answer is no. You don't have to have all the things. I'm giving you a lot of options of things that you could pursue. Choose the things that you can do and that make sense to you and that you want to do, and then do them well and be active in those things. You don't have to do all of it. If you have a farm tech job, you may not have time to also do shadowing. Shadowing, though, isn't a huge time commitment typically, so if you can get one shadowing experience, that's great. A lot of students don't have even one, so that's going to be an added bonus to your application. We're not looking for a minimum number of hours. We're just looking for you to start exploring your career and kind of figuring out what you like, so you have so you're educated about it. Contribution to diversity. So basically, we want to know what is it that you can offer the UK College of Pharmacy community, and everybody has something to offer and to contribute. So thinking about that and thinking about that question. You'll find that there's some questions in the application that are kind of geared towards that. So thinking about that now. There is an essay. The point of the essay is your personal statement. It's basically your opportunity to express motivation for the profession. It's also your opportunity to show your passion, to show why you're choosing to explore this route, what has brought you to this point. So I encourage students to approach it from a personal point of view, to try to really tell your story through that essay, and to try to avoid sort of generic examples, or avoid writing what you think we want to hear. Make sure that you're really telling us what truly brought you to this point. And get some help with that personal statement. So talking to your advisor is a great idea. If you have a writing center on campus, I encourage seeking them out for support. I encourage working on that writing center well in advance of when it's time to apply, because then you can get it polished and fine-tuned, and then when it's time to do that application, it's ready to go. It's just a matter of copying and pasting into the application. If all of these things look great, then the next step is the interview. The way the interviews work at UK is a little bit different. Has anybody heard about our interviews? Yes.
Yeah.
What have you heard?
Somebody went this year and they said that they had like a few different, like maybe like 8 situation like rooms, and basically it was just like you read on the door like what the situation was, and you went in and like you might be talking to a client or something like that.
Very good description. Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's called the multiple mini interview. You can Google that, and I encourage that you do. It's a great idea to understand what you're getting into so it doesn't freak you out. It's not meant to intimidate you, but if you really don't know exactly what you're encountering and you walk in, it could be intimidating. So do your research on it. There's nothing you need to do to prepare or plan for it other than what you would normally do to prepare for a typical interview. Just know that you're not going to get those traditional interview questions. You're not going to get, tell us why you want to be a pharmacist, or because we're hopefully getting that in your essay. So instead, our interviews are meant to assess your soft skills, those things I mentioned that we're really looking for, the compassion, the empathy, the communication, responsibility, ethics, things like that. So just as he described, there's basically 8 stations, and you get 7 minutes in each room. You get 2 minutes to read a scenario, and then you walk into the room and you have 7 minutes typically with one person to have a conversation about that topic, and then you exit the room, and then you go to the next room and you do it all over again, and you do that 7 times. There's 8 stations, but one of them is a break, so 7 total. The advantage of this type of interview is that you get 7 shots. So if you bomb one, it's okay, you get 6 more. And that's not typical of an interview. Usually if you get one chance and then if you blow it, then oh well. So I always try to tell students to think of the positive spin of that. Just think about, getting 7 chances. And usually students have one that they don't like as much. It's not their favorite, and we expect that. But if you go online and Google it, you can find a lot of information about the MMI. You will find most of it is geared towards medical schools because it's more commonly used in med school than pharmacy. And you'll find that a lot of it is Canadian because it was first invented in Canada and it's a very popular practice there. And it's become more popular here. Any questions about any of that stuff?
Did you say that undergraduate research kind of counts towards like shadowing?
Yes, absolutely. We see that as sort of the same, in the same area in terms of experience and exploring your career.
Do you all recommend having a degree, a bachelor's degree, or just pre-regs?
Not necessarily. So I always tell students that's a personal choice and it's your own personal path, and people make that choice based on a lot of different criteria that we can't really determine. And so that's not something that we look at. It's not something that factors into our consideration. So applicants that have a degree don't necessarily have an advantage over students that don't. In terms of admission, 50% of our students typically have a degree and 50% don't. And that's just how it follows. That's not because we're manipulating those numbers in any way. That's just how it works out. Most of the students that have come to us from UK, honestly, are on the accelerated track because they're there and they already know they kind of want to be there. So most of them are doing the 2 or 3 year track, although we will have students every year that decide, nope, I want to go ahead and do the full 4-year degree. And for some students, they want that traditional experience. They want to go through the 4 years, they want to graduate with a degree, and they want to walk across that stage, and they want to have that kind of traditional college experience before they go off and do professional school. And that's a completely valid choice if that's what you're feeling. For some students, it's more important to save that year because they really want to save a year off of tuition, or they just are really ready to get into it, and that timing is important to them. So at the end of the day, make the choice that makes the most sense to you. Don't worry about how it's going to look for us. As long as you have spent the time developing a strong application, and that we do like you to take some opportunity to take some challenging courses if you can, and that you can still do that even on an accelerated path. We don't really encourage just doing just prereqs and then knocking it out, because, I mean, you could do that and get admitted. So some students have, because we have students on our 2-year track, but those students typically are already very highly motivated and driven students, so their applications typically are stronger anyway if they're able to get through that program in the 2-year plan, so that's kind of an exception to that rule, but generally we'd like to see something beyond just the prereqs. Okay, go to the next slide. So this is the prereqs, and you're probably familiar with those. And inside your book, I actually gave you the one with the EKU courses listed on them. So if you have questions about that, you can ask me at any time. At any time you ever have questions, or if you take a course, for example, sometimes students will take a course over the summer somewhere else, and they wonder how it's going to transfer. If you're ever worried about that, just send it to me. I'm the one that reviews all the transcripts in the college, so I'm really familiar with the coursework. But typically, if you're at EKU, those are the classes we want you to take. This is basically another view of what I just talked about in terms of thinking about your application as a big picture and how you're going to develop it, and really the 4 key areas you want to focus on. So academics, how are you going to show academic strength? Experience, what are you going to do? Make sure you get some experience, making sure you get some hands-on patient care. Building soft skills, how are you going to express that? All of those things that I've been talking about. And then the details of getting ready to apply, all the logistics, the actual, when do I take my BCAT, when do I take my FARCAS, all that, which I'll go over with you in just a moment. Just remember that these 4 things are kind of what you want to do. The other thing I want to tell you is that everything that you're doing right now to build your pharmacy application should be also building skills to be a strong professional student and ultimately to be a pharmacist. Our curriculum is very collaboration focused, it's very hands-on, it's very patient care based. Our curriculum is also really dependent on students being able to think critically. So anything that's going to encourage those skills is going to help you when you become a student in our program. And students say time and time again, if your communication skills are lacking, if you don't work well with others, our program is going to be a struggle. Because that's just the nature of our program. And we just implemented a new curriculum last year, and the new curriculum is called a flipped classroom. So our students are given an iPad, and a lot of your information is uploaded or downloaded onto that iPad, and you're asked to sort of be responsible for your learning and come to class with that knowledge, come to class prepared. So you may be given videos or apps or group projects or reading assignments. You're gonna do that on your own time and then come to class and be asked to solve problems. We're gonna give you patient cases and we're gonna put you in healthcare teams and we're gonna say, here's the situation, how do you now do this? The idea is then to give you more real world working experience so that that will translate into working in pharmacy. The other thing that's important to note is there is a community service aspect integrated into our curriculum. So all that community service that I'm saying is important for you to do is going to continue to be important because it is actually part of the curriculum. You're going to continue to be asked to serve on committees and to do community service throughout the area. Any questions about any of that? Okay. So I always say kind of choose your own adventure. So these are just sort of some tips. You want to keep track of your ideas as you come across them and set some short-term goals for yourself. Try not to get overwhelmed by thinking I have to do all of these things. Make short goals and just think I'm going to focus on this one thing. I'm going to focus on this area and do that thing well. Explore interesting courses, clubs, conferences, any other ideas that you come across. Start networking and gathering information. So you can do that by talking to other pre-pharmacy students, start to get to know them, and find out who they are on campus. I know that you guys have a list, but you don't necessarily all know each other. And that's true at UK too. And so our students have to really work to find each other out. So whatever you can to encourage that will be a good thing because those ultimately will be hopefully your classmates and then your future colleagues. Pharmacy becomes a very close-knit world the further you get into it. At UK, it's kind of a joke right now. They call themselves the Pharmily, or sometimes they say Farm Fam. And it really is that feel. It very much is that feel that's developed. So start meeting those people now and talking to professors, going on websites, learning as much as you can about the profession. Track your accomplishments. So this is a tip that I always try to get students to do is to start keeping a log of everything you've done so far and everything you continue to do. And be really specific about that. So how many hours did I spend doing this particular activity? How many total hours of time did I spend with this organization or at this job? Because when it gets time for you to do your PharmCast, you will have to record all that. It's all self-reported. So no one's going to come back and track and make sure that that is accurate to the number, but it's going to make your life so much easier if you've already collected that information and you're not having to go back and rethink, oh, I don't know, I worked there for like 3 years, how many hours was that? So, start doing that now. And then, keeping a journal of your experiences, also your accomplishments. So things like awards, if you happen to do any publications, keeping track of that. So make a plan. You really want to take action earlier, so you don't want to start right before pharmacy school. Just out of curiosity, is there anyone that's applying for fall of 19? So this next cycle. Fall of 20? You think you're 19?
Yeah.
And you're 20?
Yeah.
And you think you're 20?
Yeah, I'm about the same.
About 20? Okay. So for 19, that would be applying, I'm about to show you the timeline. That's going to be, you're going to be starting the process this summer, essentially. So pretty much 9 to 12 months out before you plan to start pharmacy school is when is the application cycle. In terms of preparing it, you're already doing that now just by being here and to start thinking about these things I've talked about. So it's never too early to start gathering info. And again, remember, you don't have to do it all. Just make a plan that works for you, that makes sense to you. So often I get the question about the major, so I'm just going to put that out there. Honestly, we don't have a preference in major, and we don't look at your major, to be totally honest. So any major works. There are some common majors that we typically see, and they're sort of your usual suspects. Do we get a lot of chemistry and biology majors? Absolutely. But we also get kinesiology majors and English majors and nutrition majors and pretty much everything. So the major is less important to us as it should be to you. Your major should be your backup plan. It should be something you enjoy, something you're passionate about, and something you're going to do well. And something that truly could be a backup plan, so that in pharmacy school, if you change your mind about it or it doesn't work out, you have a plan for a degree. How do you figure out your career path? We've talked a lot about that, but explore your options. The only thing I didn't mention is if you're interested in any of those dual degree options, the dual degrees, You may want to explore those a little bit too, to kind of start seeing what might work for you. So for example, if you have an interest in public health and you have opportunity to take any classes that might be related to public health, it might be a good opportunity to do that. Business, if you're interested in exploring the MBA, you do have to take all 4 of their prereqs. So for us, you only have to have 1 business class, which usually is microeconomics or macroeconomics. If you decide you want to pursue the MBA, note that you have to have micro and macro and accounting 1 and 2. So those 4 classes. Those classes can be typically picked up in the summer or kind of put in as electives, so it's not too difficult to get it. You just need to plan ahead. When do you apply? 9 to 12 months out. So the timeline works like this. You should plan on registering for the PCAT in April. So for 2019, that would be this coming April, is when you register for the PCAT. For those of you applying for the next year, it'll be next April. Register in April. It opens up April 2nd this year. You want to register as soon as possible in order to get your seat where you want to take the test. So you don't have to drive too far, or so that you don't have to take an 8 a.m. exam if you're not an 8 a.m. person. You want to make sure you pick a time slot that works best for you. You want to plan on taking that PCAT in July. And that's no matter what. So always a year before, take it in July. Your first PCAT test should be in July, and note that we expect that most students will take the PCAT more than once. Some students are fortunate enough that they do well enough on the first one and their application is strong enough that they get in the first round of interview and they get admitted right away in October. And if so, awesome, then you can drop that second test. But I want every student to budget and plan on 2 tests at least, possibly 3. So think about that in advance and start making a budget plan for yourself. See how much all of this is going to cost. Because it's expensive to apply for professional school. So start figuring out those numbers now so that they don't shock you or surprise you. So you can kind of plan ahead and have the money set aside for that. Because you'll need to budget for the application fees, for FarmCast, for PCAT prep materials, all those things, interviews. Submit your application in early August. So typically students start working on their FarmCast app in July as well. And it takes a while. It's a really complex application. I encourage you to dig deeply and read everything so that you really are super familiar with it. You can do that in advance. But we want you to submit it in early August, ideally the first week. The reason for this is the strongest advantage you can have of being a competitive applicant. This advice is to help you as much as it is to help us. If you apply early in the cycle, your opportunities to get an interview are going to be significantly increased because we have the fewest amount of applicants and all of our seats to fill in the beginning. So we're not going to wait to see if somebody else comes along in April. It's amazing. If we have somebody that has potential now, why would we wait? We're going to bring them in. So apply early. Note that once you apply, you can continue to improve that application. So if you're worried about your PCAT score, don't let that stop you from submitting that application. Go ahead and submit that application. We know you're going to retake that PCAT again. We may still bring you in for an interview based on the knowledge that we know you're going to repeat it because we may get that second score in time for admission consideration. Also, we're going to review you each round. So if you apply early and you don't get an October interview or you don't get admitted in October, we're going to roll your application to the next round in November. We're going to review that application again. We'll do that again in January. We'll do it again in February. We'll do it again in March. So it goes all the way to April. So not only are you getting sort of early priority, you're also getting multiple looks. Any questions about the PCAT? Yes.
Do you have I think I looked online, I saw like average scores, maybe like 79 or 80, like percentile on the PCAT.
Typically our average scores is 70, but that's super misleading. So I always want students to caution you to use that as your guideline because we have a wide range of scores that are admitted with the PCAT. The PCAT is probably our most hardest thing to predict, and it's the least predictive of success for our program too. Doesn't mean that it's not important because we still look at it and it is a balancing tool, but depending on your application, it could mean more or less important depending on what your grades and everything else look like. So I tell students to try to aim for a 60 percentile or above, and for your sub scores to aim for a 50. That should be your goal. Do we admit scores lower than that? Yes, we do. But that should be your goal, to be competitive. We are doing a PCAT prep series. We just finished it. Actually, last night was our last session, but we're planning on doing it again. So look for that advertised, because you're more than welcome to attend that. We open that up to anybody. Some of our current pharmacy students led a 3-part series to prepare students for the PCAT, and those are for students that are about to take it, that are going into this next cycle. But we definitely plan to offer that workshop again because it was really successful. Get the Kaplan book. That's the book that is recommended. And if you're wanting an additional source, my next top pick would be Dr. Collins. And that would be by far my students' pick. So most students say that they love Dr. Collins. Kaplan is the book that's endorsed by PCAT, and it should be the standard, and it's the most affordable. It's about $29, I think, on Amazon. And it has everything, and it also has practice tests. But in addition to that, if you want something more than that, if you want to go more in depth, Dr. Collins is a good resource. It's pricier, it's about $300 or $400. Although I've heard students have been able to get it used for much less than that online, so start looking for it. The difference between those two resources is Kaplan is good at teaching you test strategy, and Dr. Collins is good at reviewing content. It's more like flashcards and things like that. They both come with practice tests. No matter what you use, I want you to do the Pearson practice test before you take the PCAT. That is probably my #1 tip for the PCAT. The Pearson PCAT practice test. Pearson is the maker of the PCAT. They make a practice test. It is the most accurate test that you're going to get. 80% of the questions that appear on that test appear word for word on the actual test. It is a 4-hour test, just like the 4-hour test you're going to take. It's even set up in the same sections, and the timing and everything is identical. So you'll get a diagnostic report also. If you take that test, at the end of it, they give you a diagnostic report that you can print out and look to use to help you study. It's much more affordable to purchase that practice test than it is to practice on the real PCAT. I hear from students all the time who say, I'm just gonna go take the PCAT cold. I'm just gonna go take it, see how I do. And I'm like, that's $200, and that's a score that's gonna be submitted. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. Why do that to yourself when you can instead take pretty much essentially the same test that's made by the same maker for only $50, and it won't be an official score. So that's what I'm going to encourage you to do. And you can find that on their website, on the PCAT website. You can find a link to their practice test. So lots of things we have going on all the time that you're welcome to participate in. Pretty much everything we do is open to everybody. We don't limit our activities only to UK students. So you guys are close enough to drive in, so come and visit us. You're welcome to have individual sessions with me. Some students will come in and do consultations before they get ready to apply because they just want to know, make sure they have all their ducks in a row. You're absolutely welcome to do that at any point. Just send me an email. You're also welcome to send me your PCAT scores. So students, when they take their PCAT, they sometimes freak out in July because they think it's not strong enough. And sometimes their assessment isn't my assessment. So I always say, email it to me and I will tell you. And I will be very honest with you. And I'll say, here's where I think you need to work on, or here's what I think you need to do. Or actually, you're in a pretty good range there. So feel free to do that. You can also come to our preview day that was just tweeted out. PharmD Preview Day, Saturday, March 24th. That's a good opportunity for you to meet students and to meet current faculty members, to find out about our curriculum, to find out about the profession as a whole. You're welcome to bring a guest to that, and we provide you food. You do need to register for it, so the link was just tweeted out, so you should have that. You can also find it on our website. It's a great day. I recommend everybody come to it at least once. You're also always welcome to come to UK Pre-Pharm Club, which inside your folder, there's a little half sheet. Actually, it has the link to Preview Day inside there, and it also has the link to, maybe you guys don't have the half sheet. You don't have the half sheet? Okay, I can tell you the dates right now. They're March 7th is the next Pre-Pharmacy Club meeting at 5 p.m. in our building. And if you want more details, you can email me. But you don't have to register for that, you can just show up. This is the College of Pharmacy's various social media platforms. We have a social media and alumni director who is really active. The reason why I'm telling you this is a really good way to start educating yourself about what's going on in the college and what they're doing. You'll find a lot of times it's just kind of fun stuff like this. But you'll also find out about different awards that people have received and projects people are working on, or cool things that are happening within the college. And it's really informative, so it's a good resource. She uses all three of these, so whatever social media you're on, there is I don't know what it's called, our page for each one of those is there, or Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So feel free to take a picture of that if you want, or just Google it, you can find us. And then the last thing that I want you to do, if you want to start getting updates from me, you can text me. So if you text me this number, I will add you to our email list. And if you text me, this is what I want you to text me. I want you to text me your name and the year you're thinking of applying. So for example, EKU 2019 or EKU 2020. And then I will get that text. I will add your information into our database, and I'll text you back and say, great, thanks. There are two things that we do. We send out usually once a month, sometimes it's a couple times a month, email that comes from MailChimp that's just a list of all the things that are going on, sort of reminders. We only do that at most once a month, sometimes twice a month if we have something really important. And then the texting is more of a personal conversation. So if I have something that really pertains to you specifically, I may send you a reminder, but more than likely it's going to be a question. I may say, hey, did you know, da-da-da, or hey, have you registered for the PCAT, or something like that. You're also welcome to text me at any point. So that's a good way to stay in touch with me if that's more convenient to you than email. You have my email, which is on the business card in there, but you also can just send me text questions and I'll answer them right away. That is it. Any last questions that you guys have about any of it? Curriculum, application? Yeah.
Yeah, so let's say you did take the PCAT and you didn't do so hot, and then you took it again and like your score like jumped up a whole lot. Will they care about your
Yes,
first
we will
score? Like will they care?
We will, two things that will do for you. One, we're always going to take your high score, no matter what. So we're going to take your high score. But do we see all your scores? Yes. They're not invisible. They all show up in your FarmCast application, but it shows improvement, and it shows growth, and it shows grit, and it shows perseverance. Again, all skills we're looking for a pharmacy student. So when a student can show that kind of growth and improvement, that in itself is huge. And so that's why I really encourage students planning on taking it twice, because it cannot hurt you, it can only help. If for some reason you happen to do worse, we're going to still take your highest score, so that won't be held against you. The other thing I will tell you to do is when you retake, so those July test scores will get to us. So everything in FarmCast takes about 4 weeks to process. So whenever you're sending anything into FarmCast, know that we're not going to see it for another month. So that's why we want you to apply the first week of August, even though you'll see that the early decision deadline is September 5th. Early decision is if you know for sure UK is your top school, this is where you want to go, you can apply early decision. You can also just apply early and not select early decision. And that's what either way I want you to do it. Whether you choose early decision or not, I still want you to apply on that early decision deadline. PCAT scores, those July PCAT scores will be in there in time for us to get them. If you though retake it in September, you can upload your unofficial score to FarmCast. And I encourage that you do that. The day you take your PCAT, you'll get a printout. You'll know your test scores that day. We won't see them for another month if you wait for FarmCast to upload them. So just upload them yourself, and then we'll have it that day, and we can use that for interview consideration. Good question. Anything else?
The courses listed here, like the one for microbiology and lab,
Mm-hmm.
is this the only class that accepted? Because I was told there was another one. It was clinical microbiology.
Is it medical microbiology? Clinical? Send that to me and let me look at it. I don't know it off the top of my head, but if you just email me that course number, I can confirm it for you.
Yeah, I think it's Bio 271 or 270.
273. I mean, I'm in it right now, so I
Okay.
really hope it's.
It probably is. If it's an advanced course and it's the same scope, then
Yeah.
it's fine. Where we get into issues is with anatomy and physiology, when people take
Yeah.
vertebrae, like where we won't budge on that. We're really, really strict about it needing to be human. But with something like microbiology, it's a more advanced class, or like, I know that at some schools there's a medical microbiology that people take. We definitely will accept that. So it sounds like something we will accept. Just send it to me for confirmation, and that way you'll have it in writing.
Yeah, I was just told that it's a better class to take because it's more interesting. It's like more geared toward the clinical side of things and
Yeah.
how the labs work in hospitals, that sort of thing.
Absolutely, and we have one like that too at UK. We have one that's, like the basic one is 208 and 209, which is what most
Yeah.
people take, but we also have a 308 and 309, which we will also accept. So I bet it's probably aligned with that. I bet that's probably a similar class.
So I'll definitely email it to you.
Yeah, I always tell students just to be sure, send it to me. So
Yeah.
that way you don't find out in the middle of your application year that you suddenly have to go take another class that you thought was done.
Right.
Yeah. Anything else? What majors are you guys currently?
Chemistry.
Chemistry,
Biology.
biology,
Biomedical sciences.
biomedical sciences. Great. And what year are you guys currently?
Junior.
Junior? Junior. Junior. Okay. So this is a really good time for you guys to be getting this information. This is perfect timing, honestly. As I said, as you think of things, you now know who I am. You know where